help me to pray so that I can win the war on graft. That was the request by Kenya's President Uhuru Kenyatta when he hosted Pope Francis at State House in Nairobi, Kenya. In the same breath, the Pope likened corruption to sugar, saying that a country that embraces it is likely to suffer and have dire consequences. So in the same breath, the United States has today banned government officials linked to corruption from traveling to the U.S. We'll give you details of that. Thank you so much for joining us on KTN Prime. I'm Linda Ogutu. Let's first take a look at the highlights.
We rely wholly on what we call cancer registration within health facilities.
Researchers finally speak out on the unexplained deaths in Marsabit.
There are individuals who cannot go to the United States as a consequence of involvement in corruption.
Entry denied. U.S. government visa ban on corrupt Kenyan government officials. Also coming up, the link between Mira chewing and sexual performance.
The United States of America not only recognizes our role in creating this problem, we embrace our responsibility to do something about it.
And U.S. and China on the spot as climate change talks begin in Paris. Thank you for joining us. Our sign language interpreter tonight is Meresha Oweti. Let's begin with the story that KTN News has constantly and consistently been reporting on for the last 3 years. And the Kenya Medical Research Institute, KEMRI, now says radioactive materials as a result of oil exploration in Marsabit County is not to blame for the rising cases of cancer. A report by the medical agency, however, says water sources in the county are highly contaminated with impurities that are likely the cause of cancer that has so far claimed hundreds of lives. KTN's Dennis Ontarigo has been keeping an eye on this story for you. Here's the details.
It has been a month now since the Ministry of Health promised to make public findings of a report on the high cases of cancer that continue to claim hundreds of lives in Marsabit County. The verdict is out.
Or the proportion of the cases that we traced, about 32% of were had esophageal cancer or throat cancer. However, there was not much stomach cancer, contrary to the complaints from the community.
KTN News has been keeping an eye on the cancer crisis that has claimed a life from virtually every single village in Marsabit County, with Kariga and Maikona areas being the worst hit regions. The communities have blamed oil exploration as the cause of the cancer, but in its report, Kenya Medical Research Institute KEMRI says it is the lifestyle of the communities here to blame.
When we collaborated that information with the cancer types that we found that come from Marsabit, we could not really collaborate that, because the cancer types that may occur when the chemicals that have been implicated, especially radioactive elements, we expected to find lymphomas and leukemias or blood cancers, which we did not find.
But of concern are the findings that the only source of water is highly contaminated by high levels of chemicals that are now exposing residents to more danger.
The water sources are contaminated with what we call nitrates and arsenic, which may be carcinogenic.
The report has been questioned by health experts because despite the alarming levels of cancer that have claimed more than 500 lives, the research did not capture some of the worst affected regions in the county.
We were given a list of about 500 people who are in the list of what you called manyatas of death. But what we wanted is to verify that have any of these cases in the first place been seen in a facility anywhere in this country?
If diet and lifestyle is behind the high number of cancer cases in Marsabit County, then the alarming chemical levels in drinking water is another source of concern for the county and national governments. For now, residents of Marsabit County know what is killing them, but they don't know how to stop it. Denson Sarigo, KTN Prime.
Right, the family of 42-year-old Cosmas Mutunga, who was found murdered in his hospital bed at the Kenyatta National Hospital, want quick answers to what may have befallen their beloved one. Police believe that Mutunga could have been murdered by a blunt metal rod that was found at the scene. Saida Swale visited the family of Cosmas Mutunga, who are reading mischief into the mysterious death.
Celestine Mwende Mutunga holds on to the little memories she has left of her late husband. Her husband, Cosmas Mutunga Kenyatta, was admitted at Kenyatta Hospital after falling ill. He was a brain cancer patient admitted to Ward 8C. According to his brother-in-law, who last paid a visit to him on Saturday evening, Cosmas was recuperating well after doctors had extracted some spinal fluid to detect whether or not the cancer had spread to his bones. Little did they know that was the last they would see of him.
Sasa tukaambiwa tupelekwe tukaona huyo marehemu. Mimi kile nilipata hapo. Ile sura nilipata hapo. Nilichangaa mtu anaweza kufanywa unyama huo na kwa hospitali. Sasa kama ni hospitali unafanyiwa hivyo, nani pako na imani? Hiyo uso ni kama ilikuwa inachimbwa na njembe. Imeshiba mpaka njicho likachimbwa likatolewa na hiyo njicho ilikuwa hapo. Mimi niliona hiyo sura na nikakimbia.
At 5:30 a.m., the nurses went to prepare the patient for the morning medication and found him with facial injuries. They immediately alerted the doctor, who came in and certified that he was dead. The hospital management informed the authorities, and immediately the police took over the case.
Only 3 nurses were on duty that fateful night, all of whom have recorded a statement at the Kilimani police station. Mutunga shared the room with one other patient who could be the only potential witness to the murder. The patient, however, has both hearing and speech impairment, making the investigations rather difficult.
The entry is actually manned from the outside, the security officers, who report that they did not see anyone enter that ward. But I think for that we shall leave it to the investigating officer to find out more details on that.
Huyo kijana bado ndiye alikuja akatuelezea kwa vile maneno ilienda. Ni kulikuwa na mama msito mwenye alikuja, mama mnono akiwa na kibeti ameweka hapa, na kijana mpupi saisi hii. Ndio walikuja wawili. Yule alikuja akarudisha hiyo mlango ya ward. Waliingia direct. Huyo kijana mwenye alikuwa mpupi ndio alitoa chuma yenye walikuwa wanamwati nayo. Wamundunga nayo yenye ilimuua. Sasa kutoka hapo ndio akafanya hiyo bubu hivi asipige nduru.
The administration at Kenyatta Hospital has taken a firm stand on the matter, stating that only the police could get to the bottom of the seemingly mysterious murder inside a hospital ward.
The case is under investigation, so we even don't know as at now whether someone came from out or someone within. So let's leave this to the police so that once it's completed, we'll be able to say. But I want to reiterate that there is safety in the institution because of what? We handle more than 2,000 patients at any given time.
Questions are emerging on whether or not this could be a retaliatory attack or just another case of mistaken identity. And if so, what motive could the murderer have on Cosmas? A man whom, according to his family, had no enemies and lived on a meager salary, having worked as a storekeeper in South Sea Estate in Nairobi.
Huyu ndio mnasema ndio head of the security hapa. Na mtu ameuawa. Kazi yake ni gani na ni security gani anaweza kusema ako na security kwa nini? Kwa hospitali. Surely. Haya, sisi tukikuja masaa ya kuninia kuwa na mgonjwa kabla hata kama inabaki dakika 5 wewe siingia. Au stranger walipitia wapi?
Nikaona akipata nafuu atarudi kazi tusaidiane na watoto. Naye kule bandala ya kupona ameuawa. Mimi nimeumia sana kwa moyo wangu na sijui haki itatendeka vipi. Nimeachwa na watoto wako shule, mmoja ako university, mwingine ako form 2 na kuna wengine wadogo wale wako primary.
The death of Cosmas Mutunga reveals the sad reality of our security situation in the country, let alone in our environs, but now in our health institutions. But the family of Cosmas Mutunga is yet to come to terms with his death. Saida Swale, KTN News, Embakasi, Nairobi.
Let's now focus on corruption. The United States of America has imposed a visa ban to a number of Kenyan government officials who are suspected to have looted from the public coffers. U.S. Ambassador to Kenya, Robert Godek, said state and public officers who have either been questioned or adversely mentioned over corruption have been barred from traveling to the United States of America, a move to raise pressure in the war against graft. The U.S. envoy, however, lauded President Uhuru Kenyatta's move to try and contain the vice, saying his country fully supports his efforts.
Obviously, corruption is a scourge in Kenya, and it is something that all Kenyans need to fight against. I certainly welcome President Kenyatta's commitments and the many actions and activities that he's undertaking, but it is critically important that there be more progress. This is a huge challenge for everyone in the country. There are individuals who cannot go to the United States as a consequence of involvement in corruption. I will not go into specifics or names right now, but obviously the United States is committed to doing everything it can to support the fight against corruption here in Kenya.
So the war on corruption is a concern for every single Kenyan, not just President Uhuru Kenyatta. Pope Francis talking about it, and now the U.S. government is getting involved in the war as well. So on KTN Prime tonight, on our big question, we're focusing on that story. So we're asking you, do you support the visa ban by the U.S. government on suspected corrupt government officials? What do you think? Do you support the visa ban by the U.S. government to unsuspected corrupt government officials? Let us know what you think. Please begin with a yes or a no on your comment so that I'm able to sample some of your views. I'll keep sampling them during this bulletin. You can tweet us at KTN News, at KTN Kenya. You can tweet me directly at Linda Ogutu. I'll be sampling some of your views during this bulletin. Okay, so now let's focus on a story that has raised quite a storm, especially on social media. A security drill at Nairobi's Strathmore University has led to the death of a staff member after many panicked when security forces used what students thought was live ammunition to stage a pretense attack on the school. Social media went into overdrive Monday afternoon as security forces simulated an attack against the university's Madaraka campus in the Kenyan capital, with many believing the incident was real.
It may be mistaken to be a scene in a movie, but it was a run for dear life for these students of Strathmore University after what was meant to be testing their preparedness to handle a terror attack turned out to be horrific. The latest information indicates that one member of staff has succumbed to their injuries, while 18 others are still in various hospitals in the city.
Currently, I wasn't in school myself. I was in an apartment in Madaraka, though from my window I could clearly see what's ongoing in school. So all of a sudden I was busy doing my studies. I was preparing for tomorrow's exam. Then I heard gunshots. All of a sudden I could see students running helter-skelter in the student center, and I saw a student jumping from 4th floor to the ground floor.
Then we had gunshots coming and a stampede. So all of us started running towards the gate, the Timol gate. The entrance was free, so we went round. Then some people were injured because of the stampede, others fell, but were later told it was a drill.
According to the school's management, over the past 10 weeks, students, the emergency response team, and staff members were trained on evacuation. However, today's scene proved to be different.
I'm the VC, so I deserve to know, but I was not told so that I could fit perfectly in there. So none of us was. But we were trained, all of us beforehand, and we were made aware that part of the training, ongoing training, will be this drill. So this is why we are so keen on assessing, because there are many lessons we are learning now, so that when reality actually takes place, we can deal with them.
The simulation was aimed to test the preparedness of the university community, but failed. And according to witnesses, 3 men were dressed as Al-Shabaab members. For a safety drill, was this pushing the bar too high?
What we are trying to do is to provide a protective mechanism for their children in case such a thing happens. We are training our marshals, we are training ourselves. For example, when the fellows show up, what do you do? This is what we are trying to do. Can we actually minimize and control casualties in case? So when the thing actually happens, the parents will expect us actually to defend and protect their children.
Both students, lecturers, administrations were not aware of any plans for a security drill, which only amplified matters. The national management came out to state anyone wishing to conduct drills should make formal requests to the Inspector General National Police Service or Director National Disaster Management Unit.
The moment we complete our assessment, we'll be able to determine what did you do well, what did you not do so well, where do we need to improve, and so on. That is actually the idea. Can we be prepared enough so that when the real thing takes place, we can deal with casualties as best as we can minimize occasions where people are jumping and so on.
Despite today's sad ordeal, the university will be paying all medical expenses and cancelling services to those affected. Zinzi Kibiku, KTN News.
It's quite unfortunate that a life was lost in that drill. Now you need to listen to this. Male consumers of Mira in the country may need to take caution as it is now emerging that consumption of this stimulant affects male sexual capability and could lead to heart attack. This is according to a study that was commissioned by the Kenyan government. Sharon Momanyi has the details.
Mira, Veve or Mogoka, a plant stimulant that is very popular in Kenya, one you'll find packaged in bundles. Mira is a plant whose fresh leaves and soft twigs are chewed to release a juice containing cathinone and cathine, the active chemicals that alter the mood of the user. But for its popularity, a new study shows that the plant has bad effects on men's health, affecting their sexual performance.
Using Mira over time can actually affect your sexual capabilities. And even though we say we need more research in this area, at least what we have does have some pointers to this.
It affects the motility, how the sperm moves within the tracts in which it passes before it results in reproduction. It affects the quality of sperm. These are studies that have been done. And then overall, it might affect a person's desire for sexual interaction.
The Mira high takes hours to achieve, and users stay with the buzz for several hours, making it extremely popular. Parents neglect cautioning their children about it because it seems like a lesser evil than tobacco or alcohol. The study by lecturers from Moi University, which was commissioned by the government in 2014, reveals that the plant affects the motility of sperm. It further indicates that consumption of the drug results to a rise in blood pressure, but it does not cause cancer, as has been reported in some quarters.
This is very well documented even in terms of the pharmacological properties of some of the constituents of Mira. A simple thing like rising blood pressure, for somebody who chews Mira every day, that can turn out to be a big problem later on, because we know a rise in blood pressure will cause several other things.
Scientists involved in the study say that the ingredients in the plant also affected the quality of sperms after a long use, causes some mental disorders like mood swings and depression.
The few studies that have been done on association between chewing of Mira over a long period of time and mental health suggest that among people who are vulnerable to chronic mental illnesses like schizophrenia, when they engage in Mira chewing, this often precipitates psychotic episodes. It makes them behave abnormally, and it can start the disease much earlier.
The researchers say that there is need for more studies on the effect of Mira. The report has been handed to Parliament for action, leaving it to users now to determine if they would continue to use the product. Sharon Momanyi, KTN News.
Lots of debate in the studio on that story. Now, it's only hours before East Africa joins the global community in marking this year's World AIDS Day. HIV and AIDS remains one of the world's most significant public health challenges of our time, particularly in low and middle income countries. KTN's Najma Ismail reports on the challenges of living with HIV and AIDS from the perspective of Homa Bay, a remote rural region in western Kenya where 1 in 4 people are HIV positive.
In western Kenya's Homa Bay region, AIDS is a major problem, with studies showing that 1 in 4 people are HIV positive. Every day, a team from the medical charity Doctors Without Borders offer door-to-door campaigns in a bid to convince people to get tested. For many here, HIV is not really a priority issue. The number of new HIV infections worldwide may have fallen by 35% over the past 15 years, UN figures show. But the fight against AIDS is far from over in this rural western Kenya. In Homa Bay's Ndiwa district, research done by MSF in 2012 showed HIV prevalence of 24.1%, meaning 1 person in every 4 was HIV positive, compared to the national average of 5.5%. What was more worrying was the rate of new infections that stood at 2.0% compared to the national average of 0.25%. Furthermore, the research showed that 41% of people affected have no idea that they are HIV positive. Some socio-cultural reasons in this area make it more affected by AIDS. The practice of jaboya is a commonplace whereby sexual favors are traded for fish. Prostitution is also widespread. There's also the tradition of wife inheritance, where a man marries a newly widowed woman from within his family.
We have to be aggressive now. We have to test everybody. We have to enroll everybody on care. And we have to be viral load suppression testing keenly. Then I think within the next few years, we'll see different figures.
37-year-old Lillian Atieno Ochola became HIV positive 14 years ago after she was inherited. The virus was allegedly passed on to her by her second husband. Then she passed it on to her son through breastfeeding before realizing she was infected. Since then, she has been trying to warn her neighbors of the dangers.
Well, this would be my advice. Before you get infected, please use a condom.
Although treatment is widely available in Kenya, UN figures show that in 2011, 72% of those diagnosed as HIV positive were being treated with antiretroviral therapy. There are still many other obstacles to overcome. Doctors Without Borders have warned that life-saving antiretroviral medicines are routinely not making their way to patients in sub-Saharan Africa, despite sufficient stock. A report released at the International Conference on AIDS and STIs in Africa called for urgent improvement in ARV supply chains in the region, stating that stockouts undermine efforts to fight HIV. In South Africa, a survey done in 2013 and 2014 showed between 20 and 25% of facilities experiencing stockouts. In the DRC, 77% of facilities experienced stockouts, while in Mozambique, 41% had experienced a stockout of ARVs over 3 months and again 41% over the next 3 months. Malawi is not immune to stockouts but suffers less from them than the other countries surveyed. 42% of 15 surveyed facilities had an ARV stockout. Another major in the fight against HIV/AIDS is the stigma surrounding those diagnosed with the disease. Many are forced to hide their condition and sometimes end up not following the treatment properly. Najma Ismail, KTN News.
Thank Thank you for staying with us. Welcome back. Let's now focus on the environment. President Uhuru Kenyatta has told a gathering of world leaders in Paris that although Kenya contributes to a mere 1% of global emissions, it has put in place several measures to fight global warming, including heavy investments in solar, wind and geothermal energy. While speaking at the Climate Change Summit, the president said 2/3 of Kenya's energy was green. Meanwhile, rich nations have pledged millions of dollars towards dealing with the impact of climate change. From Paris, our special correspondent Alex Chamwada has more.
The first day of the United Nations Conference on Climate Change was characterized by promises and commitments from world leaders to pump more financial resources into the fight against global warming. First, here is a group photo of the leaders from about 150 nations. They were received one by their host, François Hollande, together with UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon before the conference began.
Et les dommages matériels par milliards.
The French president said the fights against terrorism and global warming were closely linked.
We need to wake up to the severity of the threat posed to balances in the world. Climate change will bring conflicts just like clouds bring storms. It is causing migration, which is causing more refugees to take flight than wars.
Kenya was represented by President Uhuru Kenyatta, who was accompanied by Environment and Natural Resources Cabinet Secretary Professor Judy Wakungu.
Some of the sector-wide voluntary domestic measures and actions to address climate change include expansion in geothermal, solar and wind, and other renewables and clean energy. Close to 2/3 of our power generation is at present green. Progress towards achieving and maintaining a tree cover of at least 10% of our country's land area, where we currently stand at 7.2%, and low carbon and efficient transportation system.
Speaker after speaker emphasized that the problem went beyond national borders and finding a lasting solution was a shared mission.
Last 7 years, we've made ambitious investments in clean energy and ambitious reductions in our carbon emissions. We've multiplied wind power 3-fold, solar power more than 20-fold, helping create parts of America where these clean power sources are finally cheaper than dirtier conventional power.
Remember, this conference is not just about political leaders. There are other participants, NGOs, the civil society, environmentalists, food security experts, name them, even business community. And this conference goes on until December the 11th. From Paris, I'm Alex Chamwada for KTN News.
So Alex Chamwada is keeping an eye on what's going on at that conference for you. Pope Francis ventured into one of the world's most dangerous neighborhoods on Monday to implore Christians and Muslims to end a spiral of hate, vendetta and bloodshed that has killed thousands over the past 3 years and divided a nation. Ending his 3-nation African tour under intense security, the Pope passed through a no-man's zone to enter PK5, a district where most Muslims who have not fled Central African Republic's capital Bangui have now sought refuge. Sharon Momanyi has the details.
This is a picture to behold. Muslims living in the heart of PK5, a district where most Muslims who have not fled Central African Republic's capital of Bangui have now sought refuge. They gathered, waiting to receive Pope Francis into the Kodoko Mosque, some flashing welcoming banners. And when he arrived, hands held in unity with the Muslim leaders, a show of solidarity despite religious difference. And this has been Pope Francis's message to the Central African Republic, stating in his words that Christians and Muslims are brothers and sisters. The Central African Republic has been embroiled in civil war between a Muslim minority and a Christian majority since March 2013. Thousands of people have been killed, about 1 million displaced, and property looted and destroyed. Before the civil war, the Muslim population of the capital was about 122,000, but most have since fled. Francis traveled in his open pop mobile into the heart of PK5 under heavy UN and Vatican protection. The 26-hour visit to Bangui was the first time the Pope has visited an active war zone. Francis said his visit to Central African Republic would not be complete if it did not include this encounter with the Muslim community. The chief imam at the mosque thanked Francis for his visit, which he said was a symbol they all understood. As he delivered mass in Bangui on Sunday, Francis called on the warring factions to lay down their arms, asking them to instead arm themselves with justice. Francis has repeatedly struck on themes of reconciliation and tolerance. The Pope also paid a visit to a pediatric hospital in Bangui, where he laid his hands on ailing children, praying for and blessing them. His visit to the Central African Republic brings to a wrap his 6-day African tour, where Francis has repeatedly struck on themes of reconciliation and tolerance. Kenya, Uganda and the Central African Republic have all had history of war, ethnic and religious conflict, and his messages of reconciliation were very relevant to the nation. Pope Francis has also used his first visit to Africa to raise issues such as poverty, corruption, climate change and poaching. The trip has seemingly captured all of the core themes of Francis's papacy, from war and peace to interreligious dialogue to the environment to his passion for the poor. Sharon Momanyi, KTN News.
It's the last day of November. Thank you all for staying with KTN News. Time for us now to take a look at business. I'm Joy Doreen Mira. Kenya's inflation maintained an upward trend for the 5th month running on the back of higher food costs, interest rates, and the ongoing El Niño rains, according to data released by the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics. November inflation stood at 7.32%, up from October's 6.72%. The food and non-alcoholic drinks index rose by 1.08% between October and November. Kenya's year-on-year inflation rose by 20% from 6.09 to 7.32%. with analysts stating that this figure could surpass the central bank's 7.5% targets by the year's end. The new figures come on the back of heightened anxiety over a possible rise in interest rates from the United States Federal Reserve, which analysts have cautioned could cause a substantive dent in the country's economy. According to these analysts at the Standard Chartered Bank, Kenya's business sentiment indicator fell by 8% month-on-month to 59.5%. Treasury last month cut Kenya's growth forecasts for 2015 for the second time in less than 2 months, with growth now expected to be in the range of 5.8 to 6.0% from 6.5 to 7% projected in June this year. And fraud in Kenya's insurance sector is yet to slow down, with more cases reported in 2015. According to the Insurance Regulatory Authority, 90% fraud cases have so far been reported between January and November, costing the industry 300 million shillings in false claims. Philip Kitani reports.
Over the years, the insurance sector has struggled to increase its penetration among Kenyans, with its largest stumbling block being the poor perception of the sector by most Kenyans. And as if that was not enough, fraudsters have invaded the sector, conning both the insurance companies and the public of millions of shillings, threatening the future of the sector. In 11 months, insurance firms have lost 300 million shillings to fraud.
Fraud continues to be a problem, with perpetrators continuously devising new ways of conducting their activities.
The money lost through fraud could, however, be a conservative figure, as not all cases get reported. According to IRA, of the 90 cases reported between January and November, only 4 have successfully been prosecuted.
A very small fraction of fraud cases are even reported in the first place. Many are those that go unreported for various reasons.
However, according to Insurance Fraud Investigation Unit, over the last 5 years, there has been a sharp increase in work-related injury claims as well as medical-related cases. Theft by agents has been singled out as the most prevalent form of fraud in the sector, accounting for 23%. Motor accident injury claims coming second at 19%. Motor accident damage claims 18%. Medical claims 17%. And theft by employees accounting for 7%.
We have the prime suspect in this particular case. We arrested him. I will not disclose the place where we arrested him. That particular case is still under investigations. So what this ambulance chaser used to do, when he goes to the police station and realizes probably he has been discovered, he makes a stamp for the nearest base commander, traffic.
According to the regulator, insurance fraud continued to take new shape due to the automation and new innovation to business, and traditional approaches used to tackling fraud may be inadequate. Therefore, it is important to note that fraud is dynamic, and when a strategy is identified and barriers put in place to prevent its reoccurrence, another one is muted. Philip Keitang, KTN Business.
For years, Kenya has enjoyed the title of most advanced, most developed and best positioned country in East Africa, which has allowed the country reap great success. But lately, Kenya has been losing its grip on the market as countries like Ethiopia and Tanzania join the bandwagon and offer extra sweeteners to investors. And with these countries now giving Kenya a run for its money, experts say time has come to review how policy decisions are being made and also ensure that the future success of the country is guaranteed. I sat down with Kwame Owino, the CEO of the Institute of Economic Affairs, to establish what these measures involve. Foreign investors are diverting their attention now to Ethiopia because they say the cost of labor in Kenya is quite very high. But how do we actually regain the favor that we had from foreign investors?
We are still the largest exporter of flowers. We should be asking ourselves, how come somebody else thinks that they can do that through Ethiopia and not do it through us when we've had this advantage rolling? But it's true that we have very expensive labor in comparative terms. What that means is we have to ask ourselves, what does that labor produce in order to justify that expense? So the quality of our education definitely comes into play. And let's ask ourselves, if you measure our education against that of Ethiopia, is it better? If Ethiopia's is better, then we have to benchmark ourselves against a country that's much better than us, so that we can make those. Is our infrastructure better? Of course, Ethiopia has gone into a huge infrastructure drive and all that. Not all our infrastructure is better. We have a train service that's coming in that's going to be very, very expensive.
Ethiopia has almost built something similar for almost over 50% less than what we are spending on that.
Yeah, precisely. So all those things, and whether it's bad judgment on our side, or whether it's the way we negotiate, or whether it's some corruption or something else, it shows that all these things within a value chain do affect our ability to compete. Kenyan farms, the ability of Kenyan farms to compete internationally. And so that's something for us to do in-house. So there's no single bullet. I think it all tells you that we need to get all our policies right, from infrastructure, and even when you're constructing that infrastructure, it has to be at the right cost, it has to be the right quality to be able to give our investors a good competition. But in some cases, we also have to make the difficult choices of exit. Our sugar industry. We are spending so much money, and that's affecting our productivity. Why? Because we are spending money in an industry that is already doing so poorly that we are actually pumping money to support inefficiency. That shows up in our productivity. What we should be asking ourselves is, if we are to make a choice about exiting, what is the alternative that we could spend this money on, the 40 billion that the president pledged to actually spend, that would still give us better returns without necessarily continuing to pump money in an industry that's not going to get us anywhere. So those are the questions we need to ask. So some difficult choices would have to be made, including how to go from less productive to more productive sectors of the economy. We have to make those choices.
And to catch more of that interview, you can log on to our website, ktnnews.com. Investment firm TransCentury has made changes to its board. Joining the board is former Kenya Revenue Authority Commissioner General Michael Waweru as non-executive director. According to company filings, Waweru is one of the top shareholders in the firm with a 7.57% stake in the firm. A chartered accountant, Waweru also serves as a director at East African Cables, a company majority owned by TransCentury. Also joining the board is Dennis Awori. Awori was recently elected to chair the board of national carrier Kenya Airways and has been the long-serving chairman of Toyota Kenya. At the same time, the board announced that Kara Musyoka had resigned from the board. And now I'll leave you with the money markets. The Kenya shilling today exchanged about 102 shillings and 1 cent. And we'll now take a look at how the listed companies as well did perform. My name is Joy Doreen Bira. Thank you all for watching.
Right, you're watching KTN Prime. Let's take a look at sports now. Athletics Kenya top brass Asaya Kiplagat, his vice chairman David Okeo and IAAF council member Joseph Kinyua have been shown the door. The trio have been suspended for 6 months as investigations continue over subversion of the anti-doping control process in the country and allegations of Nike funds misappropriation.
Athletics Kenya chairman Isaiah Kiplagat, his deputy David Okeo and former treasurer Joseph Kinyua have been suspended for 6 months. Athletics World Governing Body is looking into allegations of subversion of the anti-doping process in Kenya and improper diversion of funds received from Nike. The suspension begins immediately. Reports indicate that apart from the chairman subverting the doping process, IAAF is also investigating him in relation to alleged receipt of an apparent gift of 2 motor vehicles from the Qatari Association of Athletics. This happened between 2014 and 2015, according to the report. AK Vice Chair David Okeo, who is also an IAAF member, is accused of siphoning funds from a sponsorship deal between the National Association and American sportswear firm Nike. He has vehemently denied any wrongdoing, even as pressure was mounting that the two step aside. There's been demonstrations from a section of the athletics community for radical changes at the AK headquarters. In a letter to newsrooms, the chairman of the IAAF Ethics Commission, Michael Belov, says they have suspended the 3 from Monday, 30th November, pursuant to powers conferred to them. Ethics Commission has appointed Sharad Rao as an investigator. Hassan Juma, KTN Sports.
For the sports team is keeping an eye on that story for you. Elsewhere, the Kenya Bodybuilding Federation is seeking to have more people join the sport as the body seeks to focus on grassroots development of the sport. The federation is also seeking to put in place more competitions that will see Kenyan bodybuilders take part in international competitions. Robinson Okenye has the details.
Bodybuilding is among the sports that are beginning to find foot in the country after failing to float in earlier years. With the new and youthful office in charge for over a year, the federation has seen the sport to go grassroots, attracting more athletes to take part in the sport that was once marred with mismanagement.
As a federation, we are actually going down to the grassroots to ensure that at least we nurture talents from down there, coming upwards to the national level.
We are able to harvest actually good athletes that can represent our country, Kenya, into the world arena. And of course, we've started identified a few good ones.
Being among the few federations in the country that have complied with the Sports Act 2013, the federation has also put in stern measures to ensure the body is free from doping, a scourge that has affected other federations in the country.
There are several cases whereby you find that a bodybuilder uses these banned substances. But us as a federation, we are not allowing our sportsmen to use these banned substances, because once we get you, the consequences are dire.
Watu ni tofauti. Mimi mwenyewe situmii dawa, lakini siwezi sema wengine watumii. Kunao wengine wanatumia, lakini sidhani kama hapa ni hapa Kenya. Wanatumia na huko majuu.
With one locally based bodybuilder emerging fourth in the World Bodybuilding Championship this year, the federation is seeking to make bodybuilding a sport that can sustain a living.
Bodybuilding pays because is one of the sport that is loved by so many, and there's so many youth that got engaged in bodybuilding because it does pay.
Sababu hapa awali tulikuwa tunaicheza tu bila kulipwa, lakini sasa hivi zile mchezo yenye tangu tutengeneze ofisi tunaona wakubwa wameitengeneza, tunalipwa, tunaicheza sana, furaha si kama hapo nyuma.
The federation is organizing a national competition on the 5th of December that will see the winners take part in international competitions next year. Robinson Okenye, KTN Sports.
So this was the big question tonight on KTN Prime. Do you support the visa ban by the US government on suspected corrupt Kenyan government officials? That was our question tonight. Edwin Dis Odhiambo says, yes, I wish it even extends to religious fraternity where most leaders still beg in the name of the Lord. Speak Calm says, under whatever pretext, foreign diplomats must not be allowed this kind of space. May have good intentions, but no. Your feedback on our big question tonight. You can trace the feedback that people have been sending in. You can check our Twitter handle, that is at KTN News, at KTN Kenya, just to sample what Kenyans think on that ban by the US government. And it is on that note that we leave it on KTN Prime. We thank you for watching. We'll see you tomorrow. Have a good night. I'm Linda Obutu.